But tonight we're going to talk about all about building healthy habits and healthy eating on a budget and what that can mean for you. And I suppose I really want to give you some practical advice to take away with this around these topics, because all well and good kind of going through theory, but I'd really love at the end of this hour that you'll have a handful of things that you can start applying to your own lives pretty much immediately. All right, so that's going to be my aim. Just a quick introduction on myself, and Tara did introduce me at the start there. My name is Laura Keeley. I'm founder of Bridge Nutrition, which is a health and performance nutrition consultancy. So my background is in nutrition, and I have a postgrad in performance nutrition. And I'm a registered member of two associations, which is the Association for Nutrition and the Sports and Exercise Nutrition Register as well. So the topics that we're going to go through, and it's quite a, I always tend to pack these seminars to the brink of stuff to cover, because I do like for everybody to get something that they haven't heard before as well. So you might have heard of some of this stuff I'm going to discuss. It might all be new to you. So if that's the case, please don't overwhelm yourself. All right, remember, you only have to take away a couple of things to start applying to your own life. I also know this will be recorded, so you can catch this recording again if you do want to catch up on different things I discussed, if you want to kind of develop out your healthy habit forming or learn more about what we discussed or what we're going to discuss on healthy eating on a budget. So topics we're going to crack into, we're going to talk about our habits. What are habits? How do they define our everyday lives and ultimately our health as well? We're going to show you how to actually look at, why do I have that habit? How is it formed? And if it's an unhealthy habit, how do I break it? And then look at, well, how do I form the healthier habits that I'm trying to implement in my life? We're going to then move into healthy eating on a budget. This is a big one, because I suppose an obstacle that I often see with people is it's just too hard to eat healthy. It's too expensive, or it's too confusing. So I'm going to help with all of those things tonight. We're going to look at tips for healthy eating on a budget. We're going to kind of dive into, I suppose, pitfalls that I see people falling into. Everything from kind of organic foods to trying to always opt for maybe gluten-free or dairy-free. And I'll explain a lot about that as we go. I'm going to talk a little bit about frozen veg as well. And then at the end, I'm going to give you some kind of rapid, quick fire, healthy, easy meals that you can put together, and just showing you that eating healthy doesn't have to be complicated. I always introduce these seminars with a topic just discussing what your wellness is, okay? Because that word is thrown around so much. And I know if anybody actually joined me earlier on in the year when we previously did workshops with Fingal, I always, discuss and explain what wellness is, because a lot of people are confused about, what it entails, what areas should we be focusing on. And it's sometimes a little bit of a marketing ploy. Your wellness is just a state of being in good health, but it's determined by a lot of different factors in your lives. It's not just about eating healthily and exercising. It's also about, your social health, your emotional health, your spiritual health, of course, a big one, your mental health. And then addressing your environment as well. Is your environment healthy? So remember, it's not just about, eating your veg and getting your 10,000 steps. If you really want to ensure that you are looking after your wellness, you need to address all of these things that you can see here and really dive into, am I doing the best by myself, and how can I improve my own wellness in all these areas? So, and another thing to point out, because tonight's topics, like I said, are about habit building and healthy eating on a budget, I just want to introduce, I suppose, my approach to nutrition and how I would approach my education and working with clients. I am a food realist, which essentially means I do not have a kind of one size fits all approach to, recommending food. I do not have a one size fits all approach to exercising. Everybody's individual in their approach to eating and their approach to all aspects of their wellness, okay? What suits me probably definitely won't suit you. What suits your partner maybe doesn't suit you. What suits your coworker maybe doesn't suit you. So please don't judge or base your own wellness on what you see other people doing. You need to just educate yourself in the different areas and then figure out what's best for you, what suits you best. And just talking about food, because obviously this is my area of expertise, while I do encourage that you focus on good, healthy, basic foods, there's always wiggle room for the tasty food, for the food that's not very nutritious for us, but that, you know, if we only have it on occasion, is completely fine. So I will be discussing more of this in the workshop in 4 weeks. I will be back with you guys in 4 weeks. But I just want to introduce, just so you understand how I approach things, you know, the scope that where I'm in. And that this, it's being a food realist, or we call it the 80-20 approach to healthy eating. And this is what we're going to discuss in 4 weeks. But I suppose I really have to get across how I suppose where I come from as a nutritionist working with the public. So let's get into, and understanding more about our habits is really how we change them. So ultimately, we are the sum of our daily habits. Okay, every small little thing we do every day determines our wellness, determines how healthy we are, and ultimately how we get on in life, essentially. So the majority of our days are made up of repetitive routine. And that means that, you know, unless you're living the most exciting life ever, you're probably going to do the same things day in, day out more often than not. So maybe 80% of your week, you're probably going to have the same habits. For some people, the weekend can be a little, outside of that, but mostly we do the same things day in, day out. We don't really change. And that will actually determine our health and our wellness, okay? And the idea is that, you know, if you have good daily habits, then you will be healthy, you know, that you'll have good wellness, you'll have good health, because you'll have incorporated all the small things that you need to do every day in order to be like that. So it may seem small and insignificant, you know, your daily actions may seem like, you know, it's not a big deal, because we don't see the, I suppose, direct impact of those habits, but we only see them on a larger scale over time. So I always take smoking, for instance, in this, okay? We know smoking's bad for us, all right? We've proven that for decades now. But when you have a cigarette on that day, you have one cigarette, that ultimately doesn't really make a difference to your health either way. But when you have a cigarette several times a day over several decades, then you know it's going to have that cumulative effect and negatively impact your health. And that's what we've proven. So the same as, you know, making sure that you are hydrated every single day, like making sure you're hydrated one day a week isn't going to make a difference. Being dehydrated one day a week isn't going to make a difference. But being either way for multiple days over many years, that will make a difference. So we have to kind of stop expecting so much of the small things we do and start realizing that you need to look at it on a long-term plan. So again, how I often see people do, you know, around January especially, is you know, people are back to the gym, they're off the booze, no more takeaways, and they'll do it for maybe 2-3 weeks, and then they just revert back to their old habits. And the big question is, why didn't those good habits stick? Or why didn't those behaviors form the habit in order for that person to keep exercising and, you know, keep choosing more nutritious food? And it's just because they went too hard, too fast. All right. When you're changing your habits, you need to go small with them, and then you build up. And if you can build the right habits, the changes you want in your life. So if you want to see better health, or maybe you want to lose some weight or build some muscle, or just be able to kind of maybe play with your kids without getting gassed out, you need to start small and then build on them. To understand how habits are formed, okay, they're automated responses. We don't think about our habits. You know, when you get up in the morning and you go in and you go to the toilet and brush your teeth, you didn't make a big decision in your bedroom. You know, you didn't think to yourself, oh, I'm going to go in and brush my teeth. You just automatically probably walk into the bathroom and start brushing your teeth. And that's just an automated response to something. If you walk down in the morning and the first thing you do is flick on the kettle for your cup of tea or coffee, I guarantee you didn't think much about that. It was just an automated response, because that's your habit, what you do every single morning. And, you know, we learn that response. It's a response to a cue, and it's either we get rewarded for the habit, or it's the reward of avoiding something stressful. So maybe you always have a coffee in the morning because, you know, that's your instinct, because you're very tired and you know the coffee will help fix that. So that's just an automated response to it. So as always, we have, you know, good or better habits, and then we have our, you know, I won't even call them, we'll say less good, because I hate saying bad habits. We'll say less good habits or less healthful habits. And we need to, I suppose, eradicate the less healthful habits and increase, the more healthy habits. So there's no, I suppose, you know, we have this thing of it takes 21 days to break a habit. That's kind of rubbish. It can be anywhere from 18 to 254 from the science. So basically what you need to do is, and I'm going to talk you through the steps here, but we can look at the habit loop. So the habit loop is basically how habits are formed and how we, or why they happen. So you can have a trigger or cue, and then you have your behavior, then you have your reward. So a quick example would be for anybody that maybe smokes or has a cigarette when they're stressed, it would be, the cue would be a stressful situation. The behavior would be to have a cigarette, and the reward would be, you know, inhaling nicotine. So that's basically how it would work. And that's understanding this cycle is the kind of key to getting ahead of the habit or breaking the habit, as we say. So let's get a little bit more into that. So the cue would be, it's basically a piece of information that suggests there's a reward to be found. Okay, so this can be anything from, you know, if you walked into the bakery and you could smell, you know, cookies being baked, or or maybe it's if you wanted to check your social media, you know, you've got a cue there. So there's basically, your cue is just your brain telling you there's a reward somewhere. And then there's a craving. So the craving is the motivation to get that reward. So it's either eating the biscuit or, you know, checking your Facebook, and then you have your response. All right. So how are you going to get that reward, is what you're saying. Like, how does your behavior change to get that reward? So, you know, the response would be to eat the biscuit, or maybe it'll be to open your laptop or pick up your phone to check Facebook. So understanding how this step by step works. And then of course you have your reward at the end. So either that you're going to have the biscuit, you're going to check your Facebook, and then you'll have a moment after it, whether you realize it or not, to say, you know, you might have a reflection of, did I enjoy that? Should I have done that? And it doesn't always happen, but it's just something that's there. So if there's your four, that's the 4-step pattern to why we do the things we do around our habits. Excuse me. So let's look at this. Let's look at this in a more real life example. So say you're trying to cut back on your takeaways. This is a big one for people. And I'll be the first one to say, just listen to me now, I have no problem with takeaways whatsoever, as long as they're had on occasion. The issue is that there are some households that do rely on takeaways up to 3, 4, 5 nights a week. And what happens when we choose these kind of less nutritious foods, what's happening is that we're leaving out key nutrients that we need. So, you know, for the Chinese takeaway, or it's the chipper, or it's an Indian, it's more than likely going to have, you know, low veg, probably no veg. It's going to be very high in salt. It's probably high in trans fats and saturated fats. It's not going to be high in fiber. So we're going to be, if you constantly eat low nutrient foods, you're going to miss out on key nutrients. And that's the real issue with choosing kind of fast food options. So that's why we try and lower it. I would never deprive anyone of takeaway. I love them myself, but I have them on occasion, like once every 10 days, once every 2 weeks, absolutely fine. So let's just say we're trying to cut back on our takeaways. So the cue here, for instance, could be anything from, perhaps you're after seeing an advertisement for it, or maybe you've got a takeaway menu stuck to your fridge and you walk by it and you clock it and you're like, oh, maybe I'll have Chinese tonight. Or maybe a family member or friend mentions it. That's usually a big one. They're like, oh, we go get chipper instead of cooking. Or maybe you're just driving home or walking home and you pass it, you smell it, and you're like, oh, maybe I'll have Chinese tonight. So it's just registering that you've had a cue there. And then the craving kicks in, okay? So the craving, you're craving the food, you're probably hungry at this stage. There's a lot of different things. So remember, your craving is your motivation to change something. So what's being changed here? Has your intention of eating a nutritious meal changed, or cooking a meal at home changed? So it's basically your brain is essentially going to make a decision to change what you had initially planned and decide to have that. And then you've got your response. All right. So you're going to take whatever action you need to get that reward. So you might phone up the takeaway or text the takeaway. You're going to probably pay for it, collect it from the door, whatever it is, you're going to have a response to that. And then you're going to have the reward. Now, obviously, the reward is the actual takeaway. Now, as we said, there may be a question there afterwards, was that a decision I should have made or shouldn't have made? So that's ultimately why that suddenly you're sitting there after finishing your chipper going, I had a full dinner ready to go in the fridge to be cooked. Why did I choose this? How do I manage to make these, what you're going to call bad decisions, week in, week out? Because you've got a habit there. There's a habit, and it's, your behavior is nearly conditioned to make that choice. Ultimately, sometimes you may not feel like you're even making a choice. It's just like, oh, I'm going to have chipper. So it's really understanding those 4 steps that you've gone through, whether you've realized it or not. Another one would be here, it would be opting for the couch for the evening. So maybe you've come in from work, or maybe you've big plans like, oh, I'm going to go to the gym this evening, or I'm going to get out and go for a run, or going to go out and go for a walk with my partner, or whatever it is. But instead, it's now 10:30 and, you're on your 4th episode of something on Netflix, and you just don't understand, well, why did I make this decision? You're annoyed at yourself, you're feeling guilty. So let's just look at it again. So there's a cue there. Maybe you went into the sitting room, sat down for a second, took out your phone, the TV was on then, you started watching something. Perhaps you took off your shoes when you came in, or changed into more comfy clothes. Or potentially there was something in the sitting room, they called you to have a look at something, but there was a cue there for you to sit, and that's what you have to kind of hone in for, okay? Then there's the craving, and the craving, it's not exactly, a taste craving that we're having now, but there's a craving there to sit back, to put your feet up, just to relax for a few minutes, okay? And then maybe to watch something on TV. You want to see what else is happening in the program, what's going to happen next. Maybe the news is on. So there's a craving there for you. Your response then, okay? So the response is to sit down longer than planned, okay? You haven't got up, you haven't done the thing you should have, or that you had intended to do. But you want that reward. You want that reward of sitting down and relaxing. And then you get the reward, okay? And again, satisfaction may come or it may not, because a few hours in, you're like, oh, I meant to go to the gym, or I meant to go for my walk. And again, you're feeling guilty and a bit kind of disheartened in yourself. So we've gone through those 4 steps, and you may wonder, well, why haven't I gone to the gym in 5 days now? I'd intended on going every day this week. Because ultimately your habit formed around sitting around the evening just kicked in, and you probably went into autopilot with it, and you didn't make a big decision, sit down and relax. It just kind of happened. So again, understanding these habits, these 4 steps, is the key to actually kind of combating them, we'll say, all right? Because when you're aware of it, if you know that your habit is, if you sit down for 5 minutes, it may turn into 5 hours, you kind of say to yourself, no, I'm not sitting down, I'm going to go out for my walk and then I'll come in, and you can be a bit more authoritative around it. Forming healthy habits is the big one, okay? So how do we actually bring in healthier habits into our lives? There's 4 main steps you can take, and that's make them obvious, make them attractive, make them easy, and make them satisfying. Okay, so you're removing barriers from your way. So say, for instance, we're gonna say, for example, you want to increase fruit in your diet. All right, that's something we can all work on. Fruit is so healthy for us. We should be aiming for 3 to 4 portions of fruit a day. But if you're kind of going day in, day out, and you're scratching your head saying, God, I don't even think I've had any fruit today, how do we build the habit? So 1, make it obvious. All right. I mean, make it obvious by, don't hide your fruit in the fridge or in the press. A bag of apples will sit in the back of your press for 2 weeks. A bag of apples sitting on your kitchen table will be more likely to be eaten. Okay. So if you want to increase your fruit, get a big fruit bowl and put it in a place where you pass several times a day. Maybe you're going to even put it in the sitting room. Maybe you're going to sit it on the coffee table in the sitting room, because you're going to see it day in, day out, hour in, hour out. You're going to pass in and out by it. You're more likely to put your hand out and grab a banana or grab an apple or whatever it is. But if you bring home your fruit and put them at the bottom of your fridge or the back of your fridge, you'll forget all about them. Okay, so make it obvious. That's the first one. Then make it attractive. Okay, don't start with, I don't know, cantaloupe melon if you don't like cantaloupe melon. Or don't start with kiwis if you have always hated kiwis, but you know they're healthy, so you're trying to eat them. Just start basic. If you're a person right now that doesn't really get much fruit, and this can be applied to anything though, I'm just using fruit as an example. Start with stuff you like. So if your favorite fruit is just mandarins and bananas, get a big fruit bowl and fill them with mandarins and bananas. Okay, so it's a really about making it attractive to you, making it. And this is the next step, making it as easy as possible. Okay, make it that it's going to be easy and attractive to you. And again, don't start with like, I remember working with a client before and we were trying to increase his fruit, and he went off and bought loads of pineapples and told me that it took him nearly half an hour to 45 minutes to, peel the pineapple, cut the pineapple, and he just didn't think it was worth the effort. I had never told him to focus on pineapples, but he made it incredibly difficult for himself. I don't know if anybody's tried to peel a pineapple. It's incredibly hard. It's a big task. So make it easy for yourself. If you're a person that's on the go constantly, apples and oranges, all right, things that are easy to grab. Don't start with a big orange that makes a mess and might take 5 minutes to peel. Start the easiest things you can to eat. So once you do that, you're reducing the friction. You need to make the habit nearly so easy to form that you should do it. If there's any bit of barrier in the way, you're less likely to do it. And then make it satisfying. Again, we go back to the point of pick stuff you like. If you don't like certain foods and you're only including them because you think they're healthy, you're not going. That's a very hard habit to build. All right. And it's a big pitfall I see with people trying to eat healthier, that they think that they need all of these, really exotic, extravagant foods to be healthy. You don't. And I'm going to actually discuss that when we talk about eating on a budget. But make sure that you're picking stuff that satisfies you, that you do like the taste of. I always encourage people to try new foods, but just try and stick to what you know when you're starting out. Let's look at another example. Excuse me. Increasing your exercise. So again, if you're someone that has a very low step count during the day, or you're not big into exercising, or you've just fallen out of an exercise routine, we start with the steps again. So making it obvious. So big one to be, leave your gym or your training clothes out. If you're got jogging pants or a jogging top or whatever it is, or your walking top, or your walking runners, leave them out. And I don't mean leave them up in your bedroom. I mean like leave them on the stairs. Have them there. So if you've got stuff to do during the day and you've got exercise schedule in the afternoon, you'll keep seeing it. Or if you come in from work, leave your gym runners sitting at the bottom of the stairs, and leave your gym gear out on your bed. So when you come in to change your work clothes, you get straight into your gym gear. And that doesn't mean that's the end of the world if you still don't make it out to exercise. It just means that you're more likely, you're in the frame of mind. You've already decided, as soon as you put on those training clothes, your exercise clothes, you've already decided, I'm going to go exercising. And it doesn't have to be a marathon. It might just be a couple of, laps of the block or whatever. But it just means you're more inclined to go out and do it. Making it attractive. So get family members involved, friends involved. Start in the summer. So this is like prime time to start exercising, because nobody likes to exercise during the winter. We've got short days, they're wet, especially if it's outside. It's just, you're more likely to look at outside and go, maybe tomorrow. But we've got really long evenings now. We've had cracking weather the last few weeks. I know we've got a little bit of rain today, but that's set to clear again. So if you're taking anything up, this is the time to do it. And start small. Like you don't need to become an Olympian overnight or anything. It's just starting small, and then building it up. Making it easy as well. So, don't set yourself an arduous task or big target of, I'm going to run a 10K in 6 weeks. Don't do things like that, because that just is too overwhelming. And you miss a couple of training sessions, starts to snowball, and it becomes a negative thing rather than a positive thing. Take it day by day. If you're maybe even start building on your steps, increase your steps increase your walking by 10 minutes a day. So start off with 30 minutes and then, over 4 weeks, build it up to an hour. Like these things, like I said, they do not have to be done overnight. And it's better to, get in a habit of walking 20 minutes a day and, doing that for 10 years than walking 10 kilometers a day and only doing it for 10 weeks. We're much better off doing these things on a long-term basis. So take it day by day and then make it satisfying. So don't force yourself to go to the gym if you hate gyms. Don't force yourself to take up running if you hate running. Make it something you like. The big one is, and I remember this happened to my own mother. She went down to the gym, signed up for a spin class, and nearly came off the bike a few times because it was just so overwhelming for her. She hadn't got a clue what she was signing up for, and then said she'd never go to spin again. But I said, like, she had never, that wasn't something she should have done. She should have chosen something that she was more into, and now, so making the decision to choose a sport that suits you, and get your friends involved, get involved in local clubs, and you can try something and not like it and leave it, that's fine. But it's just a matter of keep trying. There's so many different things you can do out there. So let's look at the other side of things, guys. Let's look at how do we actually reduce the unhealthy habits, okay? So you just do the absolute opposite. Okay, so whether the first thing before we were doing was making it obvious, make it invisible. So let's look at the example of smoking, okay? Make it invisible. Don't have cigarettes in the house. Don't be around people that smoke regularly. Avoid it and just make it so smoking's a non-entity in your life as best you can, okay? Before we had make it attractive, now make it unattractive. All right, so set little rules for yourself and stick to them. So, maybe it's that you have to tell whoever's in the house that you're with that you're smoking, who, they know that you're trying to quit. So already you're putting up a barrier for yourself to smoke. Make it difficult. If you have to smoke, you've got to do it outside, maybe on the road or down the bottom of the garden. And that's in rain or shine, obviously. So it's just making it a little bit harder for yourself as well. And satisfying as well, like put a financial stipulation around it. If you have a cigarette, you have to put 10 euros in a jar, and make sure your family and friends know this as well, so they'll hold you accountable. But it's just basically inversing those 4 steps that we just talked about. Again, let's look at reducing takeaways, the examples from earlier. So if we're trying to reduce or break a habit of ordering takeaways regularly, let's do the first step and make it invisible. So that means don't have takeaway menus in the house. Like, don't have them sitting on your fridge, which I know so many people have their takeaway menus. Make it invisible. Remove Deliveroo and takeaway apps from your phone, like Just Eat or any of those. And again, it's getting your family involved as well. Make it unattractive for yourself. Remind, every time you go to order a takeaway, if you've ordered it, just remind yourself of why you're not doing it. What's your reason around not ordering takeaways? Is it financial? Is it personal? Is it health? Making it difficult for yourself as well. This is something I used with a client before, that if they order a takeaway, they have to walk and pick it up, and the takeaway is about, I think, 4 miles away. So, you can set these things for yourself, and like that, if your family are involved, make it so the whole family has to walk down and get the takeaway. And it's not about earning food or anything like that, but it's just kind of a little bit more fun around breaking the habit and making that little bit more difficult. And the last one, of course, make it unsatisfying. And I would do this with another kind of financial stipulation. If you are buying a takeaway, whatever you spend on it, you need to match that and send it to charity. And this is, again, a good one if you're kind of holding another family member accountable for it, that they have to make a charitable donation if they do order takeaways. And this isn't, again, I am not saying that you can never have a takeaway, but if you find that you're ordering it several times a week and you're trying to break this habit, this long-term habit, these are different steps you can take. Another way of habit is habit stacking. So this is just essentially building a habit on a current habit that you already have. All right. So there's certain things, like I said, we do every single day without thinking. And if you can habit stack, which means bring your new habit in on top of an old one, it's more likely to stick long term. So first one would be, brushing your teeth. We do it every morning. We don't even think about it. Straight away into the room, toothpaste, toothbrush, half asleep, brushing away. So maybe when you're brushing your teeth, you start doing some morning stretches. We all need to stretch a little bit more, especially after sleeping all night. If you're suffering with back pain or any joint pain, you should do a little bit of stretching. Obviously, if you're working with your GP or physio, you have to get their advice on that. But for the majority of us, we could do it stretching a little bit more and working on flexibility. So maybe when you're brushing your teeth every morning, 2-3 minutes, you're going to stretch as you do it. Stretch your legs, stretch your back a little bit, and build that habit on it. When you come down in the morning, maybe you have a cup of tea or coffee. When the kettle's boiling, or when you're sitting there with your coffee, maybe you do 5 minutes of mindful breathing. So this was just incorporating a little bit of mindfulness in with your tea and coffee, and just habit stacking, that you're associating that habit with the already formed habit of having tea or coffee. Maybe every day at 11 you have a cup of tea. Okay, so this is a big one that I always incorporate with clients. A lot of people around 11 a.m. will have tea or coffee, and often with that they'll have maybe a pastry or bars or biscuits or something like that. You know, it's 11s. It's what we're all kind of used to, this habit. Instead of, you know, removing or trying to get rid of that habit, and people will often do it by not having anything at all, I always say that if you're having the cup of tea, have 2 pieces of fruit with it, and just formate that habit that start everything, you know, every time I have the tea, I have the prompt, I've visualized the cup of tea, I've made it. What do I have to go with it? Oh yeah, I'm going to have 2 pieces of fruit. And just building on that, and that's a really good habit to stack up. And the one I mentioned earlier on, so maybe you come home and your habit every day when you come home from work is change out your work clothes. How you stack the habit on top of that is changing straight into your gym clothes. So the cue is there. The cue is taking off your work clothes, and straight away the habit becomes putting on your gym clothes, your exercise clothes, or just clothes that you're more inclined to go and do a bit of movement in. So that's kind of how we work on habit stacking and the 4-step process. And remember, folks, it's all about changing or removing barriers for your change. So, you know, if you have a big problem with snacking throughout the day, having healthier snacks in the house will help with that. If your big thing is you don't drink enough water throughout the day, literally keep a bottle of water in all your rooms, wherever you are. Be it the car, you've got a bottle of water. At your desk, you've got a bottle of water. Your bedroom, you've got a bottle of water. The kitchen, you have a bottle of water. And leave it out there. Make it obvious, you know, make it really, really obvious. And then, you know, like the example we've talked about in a couple of details there, opting for takeaway over cooking, as well as the other 2 things we've done. Also plan your meals and lunches for the weeks. Get a whiteboard, stick it on your fridge, and write out what you're going to have. And when it's there and it's a visual cue, you know, like Monday, shepherd's pie, Tuesday, lasagna, Wednesday, you know, salmon and wedges, whatever it is, that you're actually can see it on the whiteboard. And when you look at it, say, oh, no need for takeaway. We know what we're having. We have the dinners there. We just need to put it together. So it's all about making it really obvious and easy for yourself. Figuring out how you actually want to change, folks, is another one. So this is a really, I suppose, well-used, established way of actually changing and I suppose hitting different targets. So it's just SMART goals. And we talk about it just specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and timely for your goals. All right. So, you know, the first one, what do you want to do? Maybe you want to lose some body weight. Okay. Maybe you want to go down a couple of dress sizes or jean sizes. So that's you've written down. And I advise everybody to do this. Write it down. What do I want to do? How will you know you've reached it? Because this is a big one. It's like when people ask me, like, oh, I want to eat healthier. It's so vague, it's nearly impossible to do. So when you actually set yourself targets and goals and really make them clear to yourself, you take away that vagueness, and it's actually achievable then. Because when someone comes to me and says, I want to be healthier, that's like saying, how long is a piece of string to me? Because, you know, there's nothing measurable there at all or specific. And then, of course, we come into achievable. Is it in your power to accomplish it? Again, this comes back to people maybe approaching me and saying, oh, I want to lose 4 stone, when they absolutely don't have 4 stone to lose. So, you know, it's not within their power to accomplish that goal. And then that goes on to realistic. Is your goal realistic? And is it timely? When do you want to achieve it? So getting around, really, I really encourage you, if you do want to make real changes in your life and you do want to change different things that you're not happy with, setting these SMART goals is really important. Just wrapping up on that topic, guys, I really recommend this book to pretty much everyone I work with that wants to change their own habits. And this is Atomic Habits by James Clear. It's a fantastic book. It's something I've incorporated a lot of his stuff with my clients. I've taken those steps that we've discussed from this book, and I encourage, if anybody wants to learn more about how to change your daily habits, is look into that book. So it's called Atomic Habits by James Clear. Moving on to the topic, healthy eating on a budget. So this is I suppose a big one that I work with my clients and with players, with different athletes I work with, because most of us want to start eating a more, I suppose, balanced and healthy diet. But a lot of us are concerned about, or they kind of see that there's a price attached to that. Okay. And that's just through some very clever marketing by food companies and certain individuals as well. But, you know, there's so many overpriced superfoods out there, organic foods foods that are marketed as gluten-free, dairy-free, high protein, which are all a little bit more expensive than the generic foods on our shelves. And they're marketed as being like essential purchases for health, you know? So it's like, if you don't have this, you can't be healthy. But that's not the case, all right? So when you want to eat healthy, you just need, it takes a little bit more effort in terms of, you just need a little bit more planning, a little bit more preparation, but you can definitely enjoy the varied healthy diet at a very affordable cost, okay? So when we talk about, you know, balanced or diet, or, you know, what should we aim for? And again, I will be covering this in far greater detail in 4 weeks. So if you do want to learn more about this, please come back and I'll go through it then. But this is just kind of understand that, you know, what's deemed necessary to include in your diet to be healthy. All right. And this is essentially what you're looking at. So, you know, well, I'm like a parrot about this. If anybody's been to any of my other talks, I'm always harping on about fruit and veg. Please eat more fruit and veg. We don't eat enough fruit and veg. So this is kind of, I suppose, what are we looking at? Like a third of our diet here should be made up of fruit and vegetables. You know, lovely, fresh. Doesn't have to be organic. It doesn't have to be from the leading supermarket. Just if it's, as long as it's kind of fresh and vibrant, that's perfect. And then we have the other side of things, which is our whole grains. So everything kind of from, you know, bread to pasta to rice to flour, whole grain cereals, things like that. We go for whole grain if we can, all right? And that's purely because it has a little bit more nutrition than the white varieties. And then our other third, it's just made up of dairy foods, our proteins. And then of course, there's a little bit of wiggle room there as well, guys. Look, we have a little bit of room here for our less nutritious foods, you know, foods that are higher in fat, higher in salt, higher in sugar. There is a place for them in our diet, but they just don't make up the majority of it. So that's from the very top, guys, that's exactly what you need in order to incorporate a balanced, healthy diet. However, this isn't, you know, the most profitable for some companies. So that's not what we're led to believe. We're led to believe that, you know, we need superfoods, first of all, in our diets. So this is essentially the best marketing nutrition gimmick of the last couple of decades. Superfoods, anything that's branded as a superfood, or anybody that tells you need superfoods, just run away from them, okay? The definition of a superfood is just, it's a nutrient-rich food considered to be especially beneficial for health and well-being. So it's actually just nonsense. They tend to be expensive. They tend to, I always see them on different kind of bags of nuts and bags of seeds, you know, the way more expensive ones than the, you know, you can get some of the brands out there will charge you 12 or 13 euros for a bag of seeds, and you can get the same in Aldi for maybe 2 euros. So really, it's, if you see anything that's with 100% superfood or anything like that, it's a marketing gimmick. You don't, you know, are they unhealthy? No, not necessarily, but you can get the same nutrition in other foods. So things to focus on, a diet rich in plant-based foods. So, you know, that's something I'll always repeat. 5 portions of fruit a day, 3 to 4 portions, or excuse me, 5 portions of veg, 3 to 4 fruit. We'll go for a handful of nuts and seeds a day. So either as snacks or with your breakfast. And then we try and get some beans and peas and pulses during the week, and then opting for whole grain, whole wheat varieties of bread, pasta, and rice. So we don't need superfoods, quote unquote superfoods, or anything like that. You know, there's really nutritious foods that are very simple, and really just this list, again, that list kind of incorporates covered on the plate there. The next one we'll see that's kind of overpriced out there are these kind of foods. So foods that are gluten-free or dairy-free or vegetarian. Now, big stipulation, if you're celiac or lactose intolerant or have a diagnosed allergy, or you're following the recommendation from your doctor or dietitian, absolutely you should be going for these kind of foods. However, opting for these foods when you just, because you think they're healthier, that's not the case, okay? So gluten and dairy free foods, they don't offer more health benefits over foods containing gluten and dairy, all right? Going vegetarian doesn't necessarily, or vegetarian or vegan doesn't necessarily provide more nutrition than those who are meat eaters, because it all depends on the person's overall diet. All right, so please don't opt for a food that's really marketed as gluten-free or dairy-free or you know, vegetarian or vegan because you think it's going to be healthier for you. That may not be the case. There's plenty of foods that are very highly processed that don't offer much nutrition that will have these labels as well. So it's just kind of about being clued into these things. There's no issue with these. There's no issue with gluten. There's no issue with dairy unless you already have a kind of a pre-diagnosed condition, such as, you know, if you're celiac or lactose intolerant or have an allergy to something. So, and if you do think you do have an allergy, or if you are intolerant, you need to go and either work with a dietitian or a doctor to get blood tests. Okay, not a food intolerance test or anything like that. You need to go and get a blood test and see, do you have anything that would direct you to omit these nutrients from your diet. All right. The next one is big organic foods. Now, and to be clear on organic foods, because essentially just figuring out what it is, because a lot of people don't know what organic foods are or what it means. So organic agriculture, it's about a way of farming that will pay close attention to kind of nature, and that's by using fewer chemicals such as artificial fertilizers, because they can actually pollute waterways. It means kind of more wildlife and biodiversity. It means the absence of some veterinary medicines in animals, such as antibiotics, or rearing livestock with the, you know, they avoid kind of genetic modification, or avoiding foods that have been genetically modified. So there's positive and negatives to it, I suppose. Animal welfare is a big one. You know, I am quite for organic or sustainable farming in terms of animal farming. You know, it can result in healthier soils and healthier water quality and some, you know, improved biodiversity. If you're going organic, you're best to go straight to the farmer. All right, and you can like get a subscription box scheme, and the farmer can make more money off that. And you can go, encourage if you can to go shop locally with you know, your fruit and veg or your meat, if that's possible. If you can do that, there's you know, if you're in the Fingal catchment, which most of you will be, we've got a lot of farmers around North County Dublin that you can buy direct from, and I do encourage you to do that. But when it comes to like organic foods in the supermarket, it tends to be a lot more expensive than non-organic products. And like I said, there's some positives around it, like animal welfare, soil health, biodiversity. But if you're buying organic because you think it's healthier, that's not the case. Like if you're buying an organic food because you think it has more nutrition or better nutrients, that's not the case. The research has shown us time and time again that the nutrient components of organic food versus non-organic food is pretty much the same. There's no health benefits to buying organic. But there, again, the stipulation there is that there's other benefits which you get on board with, but from the nutrition side of things, there's no health benefits. So the thing is, when we come back to our point here of healthy eating on a budget, if you shop organic and you think you have to shop organic to be healthy, you can get hit in the pocket pretty hard. All right, so let's just take, say, for instance, we wanted to make a spaghetti bolognese. All right, for dinner, I'm gonna go to the shop, gonna get all the makings of spag bol, gonna get it home and have a yummy dinner. All right, so we're gonna go to Tesco for this one. So we have our non-organic over here and our organic over here. All right, so we're gonna bring up the prices as we go. So we have our spaghetti there. We're gonna get some broccoli because broccoli is super nutritious. We should be eating lots of broccoli during the week. We're gonna get some mushrooms as well. We're gonna get our can of chopped tomatoes, and we're going to get our lean minced beef. So again, guys, if you're getting minced beef, I do recommend a lean minced beef just to reduce that saturated fat down in your diet. Because red meat can be a part of a healthy diet. We'll stick to it maybe once a week, and we'll try and opt for kind of the lower fat varieties of it to reduce our saturated fat a bit. That's a caveat I just slipped off there. Back to our organic versus non-organic. So you can have a look at there. You can have a look at the price kind of disparity between the two. So you can see here that the organic stuff is very much, it's a lot more expensive. And we look at the totals of this, and this is a dinner that would feed maybe, you know, 3 or 4 people. And we've got a total price there of €5.40 for our non-organic ingredients and €9.07 for our organic. The nutrition between these two meals is exactly the same. All right, there's no difference. There's no difference in carbohydrates, no difference in protein, there's no difference in nutrients. We've got 3 good portions of veg there. You know, we've got our broccoli, our mushrooms, and our tomatoes. Okay, so good nutritious dinner. We've got our whole wheat spaghetti, so we've got lots of fiber and extra protein in there as well, B vitamin. And of course, we've got our red meat full of iron, full of protein for us. But one costs 40% more than the other, and for no reason at all. You know, there would be, from my side of things, from the nutrition and health side of things, there is no reason to opt for the more expensive ingredients in this meal. So, you know, if you've got your own reasons for shopping organic, be it, you know, ethical or conservational or whatever it is, that's absolutely perfect. I fully respect that. But from my side of things, it's my job to educate you in making the right choices for your pocket and your health. The idea is that if you're someone that's getting into cooking from scratch or trying to cook from scratch, and you know, suddenly you're finding that your grocery bill has increased by upwards of 40%, as you can see here, you're going to be more inclined to think, well, you know what, my shop this week cost me €180. You know, I could reduce that and just get a couple of takeaways during the week, or, you know, go down to the chipper. So the idea is like we could talk about the habits, making this as easy and as satisfying and as attractive for yourself. And if you find that you're going to get hit in the pocket with it because you think you have to have these, you know, more expensive foods to be healthy, that's going to be deterrent for you. Okay, that's going to make it unattractive for you. That's going to make it unsatisfying for you. So it's going to work the opposite of what we're trying to do. So that's kind of the lowdown on organic versus non-organic. Then we have, I always include this, and I try and get this slide into nearly every talk I do, because we have a thing against frozen food in Ireland that we don't really like it. Listen, is fresh veg the better option on a whole? Yes, we'll probably say fresh veg has slightly higher nutrients, just slightly. You know, I prefer cooking with fresh veg, and that's down to taste and texture and things like that. But is, you know, including frozen veg in your diet not a really good way to get your 5 a day in? No, it definitely is. So, you know, fresh is ideal. If we could all cook from scratch every single day and spend, you know, half an hour prepping veg and sauteing it, all well and good, go and do that. But I know a lot of us lead really busy lives. You know, when the evening time comes, you could be absolutely wrecked. The idea of starting to prep all veg is just not an option. But if you can go in and go get your country mix out of the freezer, you know, pop it into the water for 5 minutes, boil it up, put on a nice chicken breast and maybe a few spuds, take about maybe, you know, half an hour to cook the dinner rather than an hour, that's perfect, okay? Because it means that you're still making a healthier choice. So again, it's all about removing barriers for yourself. They don't, again, frozen veg, it's not that they don't have any nutrients, they have lots of nutrition. You know, a lot of the nutrients are retained when it's frozen. We went very much against frozen veg, I think, in the 90s and noughties. We really didn't want it in our diets, but it's just a really handy way of increasing your nutrient intake. I always keep 2 or 3 bags of peas in the fridge or in the freezer, because I just throw them into everything. Peas are really high in vitamin C. They've got some proteins and fiber. I into all dinners just because they're so easy. They're there, they're ready to go. So find that equivalent for you, be it peas or sweet corn or anything really. Even now we have, like, you know, Lidl and Aldi and everything, they have frozen sliced onions, frozen sliced mushrooms, frozen sliced peppers. So the variety is unreal. So if you're someone who doesn't like prepping veg, who just, the biggest turn off for you is, I really just, I couldn't bother chopping onions and mushrooms and, you know, there's nothing wrong with going and getting a few bags of those veg, using them as the base of your dishes. The idea is you don't have to, this is all about building your healthy habits, is that if you find something unsatisfying or unattractive, you're not going to do it. So there's no issue with cutting a little corner. You know, cut the corner, and if it works for you, that's better than ordering a takeaway, you know, and that's what you have to think. So looking at eating on a budget. So, you know, we've highlighted all the things of why we don't need to spend big money on food to be healthy, but how do we actually ensure now that, you know, how do I go out and do it? How do I make sure I'm saving money and actually, I suppose, creating that habit of buying foods that fit my budget, that, you know, are foods that are healthy? The first one is planning. So we said this, that it takes a little bit of effort in terms of like, you have to plan your meals. And that doesn't mean that you sit down and write out a 7-day food plan or anything like that. But essentially, it's just before you go to the shop, well, what am I going to cook this week? You know, am I going to batch cook a spaghetti bolognese or shepherd's pie, or, you know, the kids will love a pasta bake or something like that. So it's about writing out 3 meals you're going to have this week, getting a recipe for them that you're comfortable with, and going to the shop to buy the ingredients and making a list. Okay, and sticking to that list. So a big one, again, don't get deterred by things around the supermarket. We often buy foods that we don't need and we bring them home and they're never eaten. So big one is shopping the perimeter of the store first. Okay, that's where the kind of the fresher foods are located. So generally your fridges are down along the back, your breads along the first aisle. You know, that's generally how most supermarkets are laid out. So shop the perimeter and get your fresh foods first. And then a big one is batch cooking. So making enough for 5 portions of something. If you've got a busy household like that, do a couple of those during the week and you're feeding all the mouths. But you can freeze any leftovers, okay, and then have the leftovers later again. It's just a big thing. I find batch cooking, very few people like cooking every single evening. And that, you know, when you can batch cook, you can keep the cost of food down as well. Again, reiterating the point that I just made a few minutes ago about buying frozen. So again, there's nothing wrong with frozen food. They're already prepped, they're peeled, they're chopped, the work is taken out before you, and you're making sure then you're getting those portions of vegetables that we talked about. Bulking out your meals is a big one as well. So if you're batch cooking and, you know, you're trying to get 6-7 portions out of it, adding things like, we know that kind of meat and fish are the most expensive things, but if you add like a tin of chickpeas and a tin of kidney beans to a bolognese, you're not really going to notice them in there, but it will make the portions bigger. You know, it'll keep it filled. And you know, we have a thing against canned stuff as well. You know, we're afraid of tins of beans and tins of sweet corn and tins of tuna. Tin food is fine. Okay, there's no issue with it. All the nutrients aren't lost in the tinning process. Again, something that we're told for years. There's nothing wrong with having tinned goods. You know, if you've got a press full of chickpeas, sweet corn, tuna, beans, you know, you're going to be set up for when you don't have anything in the house to make better food choices anyway. So like that, when you're making big batch cooks, I definitely recommend throwing in a few tins of kidney beans or chickpeas or whatever it is you have in the house, and bulking out that meal. Plus these kind of beans, these pulses, like I've just mentioned, really high in fiber, really healthy for us, full of carbs, full of protein. Freezing leftover bread, this is a big one. I definitely remember this when I was growing up, just, you know, the end of bread being left over, bread going stale. Always, if you've got leftover bread, or even when you get a loaf of bread, put half it into a bag and put it in the freezer, and use it for toast. You know, there's ways and means of kind of not wasting food, and bread is one of the most wasted household foods. All right. Again, buying chicken whole. So, you know, you can get a chicken in the supermarket now for €4 or €5 rather than just a couple of breasts for €5. So getting a chicken whole, roasting it up, stripping it out, definitely recommend gloves for that one, from my own experience. But you can get a lot of food off of a chicken. There's a lot less waste, and definitely, again, if you're trying to cut down on your overall healthy food costs, opting for things like that is a big kind of I suppose a big reward for you if you can do it right then. So shopping online is another one. I found this quite useful for myself in college, going and actually having an online Tesco account, because you can actually pick out their budget stuff. You can stick to your shopping list. You're less likely to impulse buy as well, because you're just going through screen lists rather than walking around picking up foods. So, and you can say within your budget. So if you do have a set budget, you would actually be able to see, okay, instead of going up to the cash register and then realizing, oh, I'm after going €20 or €30 over my budget or even more, you'll see it on the screen as well. Soup is a big one. Like, you know, and again, this comes back to kind of batch cooking, making soup, putting everything that's just about to go off. You know, we always call it the kind of the end of the week soup, where everything's about to go off in the fridge, just gets put into a pot, boil it up, bit of stock. If you've got any meat, throw that in as well. Any, you know, tins of chickpeas or kidney beans, they go in as well. but it's a really nutritious and tasty way, you know, right seasoning, the right stock and right seasoning with that. And then you can blend it up in a food processor or have it like a stew, but definitely get into the habit of having stew on a Friday, or having soup on a Friday. That's the whatever's about to go off goes into is a really good way of saving on money and saving on food waste as well. Cutting down on luxuries is a big one. Anyone with kids, leave the kids at home when you're shopping. It's a big rule. Don't go to the shops hungry and leave your kids at home, because you know it's very easy to find yourself with you know, snack bars in there, crisps, cakes, anything like that, ice cream, that can slowly get added by each little hand coming in and out. So if you are trying to keep your costs down, and if you kind of review your receipts as well, you'll see where your money comes in on I suppose that ends up like adding to your bills at the end of the food shop, because a lot of the kind of, we'll call them treats, are more expensive than Whole Foods as well. It's not to say you can't have anything, but just be aware of the amount that's coming in. Knowing your kitchen as well, guys, is kind of the last one we could on here. Knowing what's at home, having a look in your presses and your fridge before you go to the shops, thinking, okay, I've got XYZ there, I don't need any more of that, instead of bringing home extra stuff that isn't going to be used. So really getting to know your kitchen and being on top of what's there in your fridge and your freezer. Having a thing where you do eat out of the freezer once a week as well, so stuff just isn't getting stockpiled. Before we wrap up into the last bit, just look at food wastage here. And this is a big one with healthy eating on a budget. The average Irish household bins anywhere between 400 and 1,000 euros worth of food annually. All right, so that's just a huge, and just reflect on that for a second, because I'm sure everyone here wouldn't mind an extra 400 euro in their back pocket at the end of the year. I know I certainly wouldn't, but we are throwing out a lot of food. So, and it's up to about a third of the food in some cases. So the most wasted foods we see are milk, bread, and lettuce. You know, that little, you know, wet head of lettuce browning in the bottom of the fridge. And, you know, you can nearly end up throwing out one once a week. A big tip on this, just to see where your food waste is coming in, is hang a bag on the inside of one of your press clear bin bag, a small one. And for every bit of food that you're throwing out, just throw it in there, just for the week. You know, it'll be a bit stinky, but just throw it in there for the week and have a look at what you're throwing out. Because sometimes we're blind to the foods that we're not eating. So maybe it's onions. Maybe you keep buying, you know, 49-cent a bag of onions and little every couple of weeks. They're not being eaten, and you're just throwing them out. Maybe it's carrots, maybe it's lettuce, whatever it is, maybe it's yogurt. Just figure out what you're not eating, figure out what's not being eaten in your house, because you need to change, you know, whatever you're buying, and that will save you money as well. So just to wrap before we finish, guys, these are, I want to show you some examples of, you know, how you eat healthily without breaking the bank. So a big thing I always try and get across is healthy food and healthy meals. They don't have to be complicated. They can come out of packets and jars. They can be frozen. They don't have to have 45 ingredients. They don't have to look like they were made in a Michelin star kitchen. They can be rough, ready. They can look like a dog's dinner sometimes, but that doesn't mean that they're not healthy and that they're not cheap. So, you know, anything, like I often go just even thinking about, and we will, if you're coming back in 4 weeks, which I hope you do, we'll talk about how to build a balanced meal. So like, you know, things that you should try and get within every meal and examples of that. But like, say for instance here, you kind of start with your first one. Okay, protein. So where can I get protein easily with this? And it's fine if it comes out of a packet. Again, as long as you know you're not eating solely out of packets, that's the idea. It's never one extreme or another. But we're getting our protein from somewhere here. So, you know, if you're opting for kind of a vegan option, and then we have our, you know, our carbohydrate source, be it chickpeas or bagels or pasta or whatever it is, we'll try and get some veg in there. We always try and get some veg. So maybe it's frozen veg or fresh, whatever you're opting for. And then a little bit of something that makes it taste nice, you know, pestos, cheeses, a little bit of seasoning, and just putting it together. So, you know, it's never massively complicated. Again, another example here, and it's the same layout. You'll see the same patterns through all of these. We're thinking, where's our protein coming from? Where's our carbohydrate source? Can I get a veg in there? Can I get a couple of veg in there? And then what's it going to make it taste a little bit nice? All right. So again, it's the repeated same pattern. It's hitting home that, you know, there's always stuff in the press. You just have to have a little bit of imagination, or even with the most basic ingredients, you can create a fairly balanced, fairly healthy, satisfying meal. And that's the kind of key to sticking to these healthy habits, to staying within a budget that, like, none of these are fancy. I don't think you see any of these in too many restaurants, but it does the trick. It's going to get you through a meal at home without opting for a 30 € takeaway that you're going to kind of overeat on. It's not going to provide many nutrients, and you're not going to feel great after it. So having some of these is all about having a few of these in the bank, even having 5 of these that you're comfortable with, that you can always go, I'm just going to run down to the shop and I'm going to pick up, a packet of rice, a tin of kidney beans, some sweet corn and some seasoning. I'm going to make beans and rice for myself, or even a sandwich. So again, it's all about keeping it simple. It doesn't have to be expensive, and it doesn't have to be extravagant either in order to be healthy. So folks, thanks for sticking with me. They're just sort of quick recaps, and I'm actually delighted because sometimes I don't finish within the hour with all my gabbing. But just looking at kind of our habits and how they form, who we are, how they determine our health, and that's ultimately what our habits do. And then taking positive steps to change our habits. How can we address our 4 points of actually breaking kind of less healthy habits and improving on our healthy habits? Looking at healthy eating on a budget now, I suppose spotting the pitfalls of why things are expensive and why we don't really need them. Looking at organic and non-organic, our frozen veg, and then some examples at the end there as well. So folks, I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you for all sticking with me. And just a quick reminder, if anybody does want to reach out to me, they can email me at laura@bridgenutrition.ie or on Instagram @bridgenutrition. But just a reminder that I will be back here in 4 weeks, all right, on the 21st of July. And we're going to be talking about food realism, and which I love talking about, because nearly everybody breathes a sigh of relief when they realize they don't have to live on spinach to be healthy. And how to build a balanced diet. So what kind of key things do you look for on your plate, or like that in your shopping basket, to make sure you're eating a balanced diet? Brilliant. And if anybody has any questions, guys, feel free to actually take yourself off mute if you like. But if that's a bit daunting, you can just type to me in the chat box as well, and I'm happy to answer any questions. A lot of thank yous coming in there. Thank you, Adrian and Pam and Caroline as well. Thanks very much. And Valerie, thanks for joining me. But yeah, and again, guys, happy to answer anything at all. And like I said, I will be back at you guys in 4 weeks as well. Thanks very much, Gillian. Tara, do you want to jump back on there? There's no questions, which I often like to think is a good thing.
Yeah, it means that you've pretty much covered everything. That was really, really good. Really good. Thank you so much, Laura. I love some of the stuff I've taken away as well, stack habits. I love that one. And leave your kids at home when you're going to the shop.
Yeah, a big one.
Yeah.
I just have Mary asking me a question there, just asking, can one eat too much fruit? With anything, Mary, with your diet, we try and just keep it balanced. So the only reason you could eat too much fruit is if leaving out other nutrients. So like that, if you had 15 pieces of fruit a day but had no protein, that wouldn't be a positive thing. So it's not about kind of eating too much. It's about what might you be leaving out if you did. And Mary's asked about eggs. How many a week? Generally, an egg a day is okay. If you do have high cholesterol, you need to work with your doctor on that. You may need to reduce high cholesterol foods, but that all depends on the person. But generally, 1 to 2 eggs a day is absolutely fine. Eggs are very nutritious. Great. Sorry, Tara, Mary, just giving out those couple of questions there.
No, that's great. Okay, so unless anyone else has any more questions. No more questions coming in there.
Lovely.
Okay, we'll say goodnight. Thank you, everybody, for turning up. And as Laura said, in 4 weeks' time, she's back. And the topics that you're covering, just remind us again, Laura. Food realism, how to build a healthy meal.
Food realism, and then how to build a balanced diet, it's a very good one, just to understand what you need to include on a daily basis and kind of how to do that in a really practical way.
Okay, I'll definitely be at that one anyway.
Brilliant.
Okay, thanks everybody for showing up and asking some questions, and hopefully you've taken some really good information from Laura today, which I have too. So good evening, everybody. Have a lovely evening, and we'll see you again soon.